There has now been another massive blow to the multi-headed hydra that is DEI, as incredible amounts of funds have now been discovered to be used to push even more corruption within the many facets of society. And after I show you, there's even more copium when it comes to Avowed, and this all connects somehow too. And then the director of Avowed now has things to say, and a BioWare veteran is very mad at how things like veilguard ended up. Firstly, in case you don't know, Elon Musk's Doge team has been combing through the United States grants to see where all this money has been going from US aid. To catch you up quickly, US aid was used for years by corrupt Democrats to push wokeness artificially into every single known facet of society by using American taxpayer money to fund ridiculous programs like giving condoms to people in Afghanistan, for example, and that's one of the milder expenses. Now the New York Post has this article, Elon Musk's Doge puts DEI on chopping block with termination of over $370 million in education department grants. According to Doge, about 70 DEI grants were discovered in this wave. As one grant's mission statement was provided, the money was used to teach teachers to engage in ongoing learning and self-reflection to confront their own biases and racism and developed asset-based anti-racist mindsets. Another grant, which spent $9.7 million of American taxpayer money, was used to fund a cohort of Cambodian youth with enterprise-driven skills. Yes, these are real things being done with money from America by woke idiots who were in power. This isn't all either. As the official USA government website states in their article, US Department of Education cuts over $600 million in divisive teacher training grants. Some of these mission statements that again costed over $600 million somehow to push within American society included receiving professional development workshops and equity training to topics such as building cultural competence, dismantling racial bias, and centering equity in the classroom. Another was for building historical and socio-political understandings of race and racism to interrupt racial marginalization and oppression of students in planning instruction, relationship building, discipline, and assessment. As you can see, like I proved in my other videos about where I cover more stories like this entire woke movement or agenda is being gutted by these cuts, and it's about damn time, fellas. They've wasted so much money on things that have done nothing but just create a weaker society and piss poor products. And these grants have been leaking into video games aplenty as well, and the past 4.5 years of game development and releases are prime examples of how these sorts of ludicrous spending has led to nothing but the complete and utter slop of content that is being forced down players' throats. This brings us to Avowed, which the entire gaming media press has been in full damage control trying to claim that this game is doing very well when in reality, it's anything but. Currently, as of this video being released, Avowed has only reached 17,000 players on Steam. These are paid players, as in full price, since Game Pass doesn't get allocated into the Steam number of course. But it's pathetic how a mere day or two after release officially, and Avowed's player counts concurrently have already been practically slashed in half already. But this game is doing great, guys. Just avoid the fact that it is actually currently sitting at number 89 on the most played games currently on Steam. And other games like Gary's Mod, Euro Truck Simulator 2, and even the original Kingdom Come Deliverance, they all have more players concurrently playing them than Avowed does at this very moment. Even Russian Fishing 4 is beating Avowed. Oh boy, yeah, it's bad. Granted, Obsidian and Microsoft probably believed that their new DEI slop game would be doing much better than this. After all, as you can see here, Microsoft even went ahead and got an Avowed advertisement running non-stop in Times Square in New York City. This ad probably costed almost as much money as Microsoft has made in paid copies of Avowed so far, which is frankly pathetic, but hey, this is what happens when you make slop. And as more people begin to discover Avowed for what it really is, it's getting far more laughable the more people discover. Here's Twitter user Rock Solid trying out Avowed as they streamed it, and I mean, just look at this.
Wait. No one's walking in the town. They're all standing still. Wait. Is there anyone walking? Wait. Wait. There's no one walking! Every NPC in the town is standing still. Oh my god. Mind you, NPCs in Daggerfall walked around the town and had like patterns that they would walk in. Not a single person is walking. They're all just static NPCs. Oh my... That's actually crazy.
This is one of those things where once you notice it, you can't unnotice it anymore. That the world is literally just window dressing in Avowed. Nothing moves at all. Everything is stagnant. NPCs are forever sealed to the floor where they stand, and it's very pathetic and honestly ridiculous to see that this is a modern game. For a more recent comparison, here's me playing Kingdom Come 2. As you can see, I am just walking around Kudenberg, looking at NPCs to show you how the world here feels far more alive compared to Avowed. Some NPCs are standing around, sure, but many others have their daily routines and consistently walk and go about their business every single day. Some NPCs are shown building things, others are hammering a nail or carrying baskets that are full of fresh fruit. And while, yes, none of these worlds are real per se, it's up to the developers to, of course, sell you the idea that you are living in a reactive and real world. And it's honestly, frankly sad to see the absolute state of what Obsidian has done here up against Kingdom Come 2. Look, I have plenty of problems with Kingdom Come 2, but their NPC reactiveness is not one of them. In fact, I would say that its ability to sell you that you're living in a medieval world, so to speak, to be one of its stronger points. Unfortunately, the game also has probably one of the most condescending characters I've seen in a game in a long time in the form of Musa of Mali, who spends the entirety of his time while speaking to you in Kingdom Come 2 just claiming that he is better than you in every single way. Musa insults Henry's culture, his food, his people, and pretty much all of their customs, and claims that Musa's people and religion, that being Islamic, are better than Henry's in every way. The game doesn't even really give you the option to combat Musa in his beliefs. And the whole thing just kind of comes across as completely tone-deaf and stupid if I'm being honest. Not to mention being out of place in this game as well, but being tone-deaf and not understanding what players want, that seems to be the de facto way of doing things when you make video games these days, from a Western perspective anyways. For an example, did you know that Avowed has no relationships or romance options in the game either? Yeah, a game that Obsidian has released in 2025, yet again, does not feature entire systems that they have implemented into plenty of their other games before this. Now I know some people don't care for romance or find it unnecessary in the grand scheme of an RPG. However, to play devil's advocate here, I would say that implementing romance options into your big RPG game is usually a net positive only. For an example, Mass Effect, Baldur's Gate 3, and even the older Dragon Age games, they all have romance options in them. Again, some of you may not care for these systems, but the reality is that if your game has these systems, it can and will create a feedback loop where players who become invested in these sorts of games will indeed come back and constantly replay them, not only to pick different choices story-wise, but to roleplay a new character that may romance Lae'zel in Baldur's Gate, but another run could be Shadowheart, or Will, or Astarion even in that game alone. These systems, which may seem somewhat plain on the surface, are an integral mechanic that can keep a single-player game's longevity far exceeding its shelf life due to how these affect and react to the player's options in the game. And to prove my point, here's the current Steam player count numbers for Baldur's Gate 3, which as you can see, the game is entering its second year, and currently has about 4 times the player count that Avowed has. Of course, the player choice is not just romance related. You can do all kinds of reactive choice-based stuff in Baldur's Gate 3, but the romance options have clearly been a big selling point of a game like BG3, which is why people will come back for more in the future. In Avowed's case, since the world is not reactive and there is no romance options whatsoever, once you beat that game, you have frankly zero reason to ever replay it. Unless you want to, I guess, run a full mage or warrior build, but at that point, there's far better games on the market that do this exact same thing. But here's what the director of Avowed had to say about romance options not being put into Avowed. Here's what she said, speaking to IGN.
Not boyfriend, then why boyfriend shaped?
I think obviously there are skillful ways to do it, but I think it is easy for romance mechanics to undermine that core experience by creating something that then becomes something players will metagame. My hope with players and their companion relationships in Avowed is that they would feel natural, and players would get out of them exactly what they want and exactly as much as they put in. That it's not something where they're saying, I'm going to have every conversation, with this character, I'm going to collect all these things and shower my companion with gifts, in the hopes of maximizing a relational meter of some kind. They say, no, you know what? If I find this character interesting when we're sitting around the campfire, I'm going to talk to him. I'm going to talk to her. We're going to get to know each other, and that it feels like a fluid relationship. People still love the Parvati interaction that you get in the bar in the Outer Worlds, and I think what they love about it is that there's something very charming and believable and lifelike about it. And that's what I wanted players to experience with their companions, is this sense that you're getting to know some new friends, and sometimes you're challenging them, sometimes they're challenging you.
So from the get-go, the director says that romance mechanics can undermine the experience. I disagree a lot on that. Romance mechanics, if anything, ties the player closer to the world they are engaging with on a meaningful and emotional level. Because in RPG games with choices, of course at points your characters could be placed in harm's way. Maybe not in Avowed's case to say the same level as something like Mass Effect or the old Dragon Age games or Baldur's Gate perhaps, but this still tracks, seeing your romance option go through their questline and potentially being harmed or imprisoned, etc. would understandably admit an emotional reaction from the player if they are invested in the game's setting, story, and characters. So already, what this director said just feels like copium if I'm being honest. The director also says they hope that the relationships between the companions and the envoy would feel natural, but let's be real, nothing about Avowed feels natural. In fact, it's the opposite. Everything feels like it's Fisher-Price made and locked into place like I showed with Rock Solid's video earlier already. It would be more natural to allow the player to explore their options, and romance whoever they want, I guess. But making them just companions without romance, you not only don't have a reason to replay this game for different outcomes, but it just makes everything feel lamer, Because romance is a big thing, guys. Again, I know some of you may not like it, but it can't be understated how important these systems are in video games regardless of what you or I's opinions on it is. Also, the fact that the director brought up Parvati from Outer Worlds just kind of shows how tone-deaf of an answer it was. Because people love Parvati in Outer Worlds. She's canonically lesbian, by the way, and can't be romanced by male characters, which was a bummer, let me tell you, but the fact that you were able to romance her at all is why people resonated with that character. Also, she was well written, where Avowed's aren't. For an example, when I saw Liara in the Mass Effect teaser trailer that came out a few years ago, that teaser meant more to me than say others because my Shepard romanced Liara in all 3 games. So when I saw Liara, my love interest, pick up that piece of the N7 armor that may or may not belong to my Commander Shepard, that moment hits me like a truck because I'm immediately met with a wave of emotions and gameplay moments because I experienced that trilogy of games fighting the Reapers and all of that with Liara at my side. In that way, Liara to me seems more like a real person, not only because she has great writing and voice acting, but because I was able to, of my own free will, romance this character that I cared about more than, say, the other options. What Obsidian has done here is pretty much just gutted their RPG experience to be fenced in, lack reactivity, and now, to add injury to insult, lack the interactive nature that games like these are known for. You lose nothing by having a romance option system in your game, but by removing it entirely, you lose a big reason why people could be connected to these characters. Don't believe me? Then tell me why the BioWare online store keeps running out of stock when it comes to items that are involving Tali and Garrus specifically. Like, look at this, guys. Look how many of these items on BioWare's store are completely out of stock. And you will notice the correlation here is that it involves 2 of the most popular romance options in the Mass Effect games. Seriously, you want to hear a woman gush in real life who's played Mass Effect? Go ask her what she thinks of Garrus Vakarian, and you'll see exactly what I mean. Dude, I bought my girlfriend the trilogy of Mass Effect games when I met her. She never played them before. I didn't tell her nothing, besides the fact that the choices that she makes continues on into the next game. I didn't influence her, I didn't tell her who to romance, none of that. I wanted her to experience those games as blind as you can from the get-go. And lo and behold, who did my girlfriend gravitate towards and romance all the way through? Garrus Vakarian. Of course. Like always, it's Garrus every single time when it comes to women and Mass Effect romance. Now you tell me if all that merchandise BioWare has sold out of would sell at the same level if Garrus or Tali or romance in general was not available in Mass Effect. I guarantee you that they would sell a fraction of these things in comparison, but this is what I mean. Romance options in your video games, when paired with good writing, mind you, which Avowed also doesn't have, it goes beyond just the realm of the digital world that you created as an experience for players. It stays with those players, it permeates, it evolves into fan art, cosplay, fanfiction, and can easily be translated into tangible out-of-game sales like BioWare has masterfully done when it comes to Mass Effect and fans' unhealthy obsession with Tali or Garrus. Whereas if you go look up Dragon Age stuff on BioWare's store, all the things that are tied to the better older games are also sold out. Sure, some of the veilguard stuff is also sold out, but a lot of what is being sold out is still tied to those legacy characters that are also in veilguard. Like the Fen-Harel stuff being sold out, but that's Solus, he's from Inquisition originally. So people are buying that because of his connection in that game, not veilguard. By the way, Solus is also romanceable in Inquisition if you play a female elf. Another example of how romance can lead to out-of-game sales. This is what I mean. Nobody is going to want to buy the full body pillow of, say, Kai or Marius in Avowed, but Garrus and Tali? I can't find it on BioWare's store anymore, but they did have those pillows on their online store for years. And I kid you not, anytime I went on the online store to look at things, they were consistently always sold out. And I wouldn't be surprised if they inevitably come back to their store this year again too, due to how well they sell. And before someone calls me a liar, here you go. The Garrus Vicarian body pillow went on sale in 2021 and immediately sold out. GameSpot even did an article when it was on sale, by the way. And here's the Tali body pillow as well, which, yes, as you may guess, it also sold out immediately too. The point I'm making here is that what these modern game developers aren't realizing is that you should absolutely cater to the audience and their needs, because it can only lead to further sales and ways of keeping your studio well fed and stocked in the future. I guarantee you that BioWare's merch alone is probably a big reason why Electronic Arts still hasn't closed them despite multiple losses. Because their online store probably makes them thousands in sales every month easily, and it's basically just free money that is printing without having to really lift a finger. The only game that has successfully replicated the actions of, say, Mass Effect or the older Dragon Ages is probably Baldur's Gate 3. But this director for Avowed is just coping. It's such a massive loss of opportunity, and it's no wonder that, again, Avowed is currently sitting at number 89 on the most played games mere days after release on Steam. That's really bad, guys. When your world is just not worth exploring and isn't reactive or has romance options and all the other bells and whistles, then what, dear viewer, is the point of spending your time in such a world to begin with? What Avowed has ended up becoming is sadly very similar to veilguard, although somehow even less so, as it's garnering 1/4 the player base of that dumpster fire. Recently, Mark Dara, a BioWare veteran who worked on every single Dragon Age game, made a video on his own personal YouTube channel, and then PC Gamer reported on it. BioWare veteran calls out the cruelty of fans celebrating layoffs. You are crossing a line, and you're probably attacking the wrong person anyway. Dara says that the hate towards veilguard is misguided, but I disagree. Many people, myself included, bought that game to experience a world that we loved, and instead we found a horrific parody of something that's supposed to be dark fantasy. Mark Dara says at one point that it's okay to be mad at the publisher, but not specific devs. He uses this as an example. Be mad at Ubisoft. Express your anger to Ubisoft or the studio that made the game, but you cross a line when you start being cruel about it. You don't need to go out of your way to cause harm to other people because of a video game. He continues, all of this isn't to say that you aren't allowed to have your own opinions, to not like the things you don't like, says Dara. It's specifically to point out that you are being angry at a specific person. You attacking a specific person is often misdirected. Well, in the case of veilguard, and this also applies to Avowed, the people who got the most criticism were people who were outspoken against the players and wanted to push their own moronic beliefs despite the criticisms. In veilguard's case, this was their director Corinne Bush, a transgender person who has a history of pushing for trans surgery scars in character creators, and ensuring that any game they work on includes plentiful amounts of trans representation when such things before were kept to a minimal in previous games. There's one single trans character in Inquisition who is a member of Iron Bull's team. Besides that, these things are never mentioned in that series. Then you have Sten in Dragon Age Origins, who even mocked the whole concept of gender identity in Origins.
Stand, you look like a woman. Flirting. I don't know this word. Speak the common tongue. You are a Grey Warden, so it follows that you can't be a woman. Women are priests, artisans, shopkeepers, or farmers. They don't fight. Why would women ever wish to be men? That makes no sense. Do they also wish to live on the moon? That's as attainable. One of those things can't be true. A person is born, Gunari or human or elven or dwarf. He doesn't choose that. The size of his hands, whether he is clever or foolish, the land he comes from, the color of his hair, these are beyond his control. We do not choose, we simply are.
So, I'm non-binary.
Who the f starts a conversation like that? I just sat down.
A game, by the way, that Mark Dara, who is now trying to defend Veilguard, was a part of and developed himself. In the case of Avowed, their director hasn't said anything problematic per se, but they just more so have been making excuses for why things like a reactive world or romance were not integral to the development of the game, and the player counts are reflecting that. However, in Avowed's case, I think the criticism targeted at Matt Hansen, the art director, who has openly stated that he only hires black people, does not hire whites, and hates conservatives, you ask me, that does cross a line. And I think what Mark Dara of BioWare is saying here, he may think he's in the right, but he really isn't. Avowed's reputation was not caused by what Dara might believe to be online grifters. No, it was caused by the actions of Matt Hansen, the art director of Avowed. Had he kept his mouth shut and not attacked people publicly, this would all be a different situation. But to try to defend the actions of these people who so clearly hate the player bases they are tasked with catering to, then having their vitriol be met with an equal level of criticism thrown back at them, and then you have people like Mark Dara acting like the devs on these games are the victims in these scenarios, is ridiculous to me. Nobody who bought or played Dragon Age, or I guess Avowed, even from a player perspective, pushed these games to promote transgender ideology, or remove things like romance options, or hire people who hate white people so vehemently despite being white themselves. These were all the opinions and decisions chosen by these developers of these RPG games of their own volition. If I could somehow travel through time like the Flash and sit there with Veilguard was being pitched, I would actually try and have a lot to say as to why they shouldn't have gone the way that they did, clearly. But you can't try to paint the developers or the studio as victims when the end result that was released is nothing short of a bastardization of a franchise that people loved. And then try to act like somehow the players are at fault for what exists within a video game they had no hand in making in the first place? How does that make any sense? This is like Mark Dara serving me a pizza and it's covered in maggots and blood, and I say, I'm not eating that, and then Mark Dara goes, why do you have to be so mean to the people who make this pizza? Like, bro, I'm the customer. Why are you giving me garbage when you expect me to pay you full price regardless of the quality on display? That's insane. Avowed and Veilguard are prime examples of how to never make modern RPG games going forward in any capacity. Credit where it's due, sure, Avowed's combat is fun, and that's good. Obsidian should take that part of Avowed at least and keep it when they make future games. But the biggest issue with these games when they're placed up against the worlds they come from, Dragon Age in Veilguard's case and Pillars of Eternity for Avowed, is that the core of these games are being created and designed by people who frankly don't seem to know what players really want anymore. And instead they're too enclosed in their own little echo chamber bubbles to realize that their making will only cater to a fringe minority of players at best. As this one content creator said on Twitter, Avowed is so generic it feels like it was made by AI. And here's what Grum said about Mark Dara defending devs who make stupid games about dumb things. Tell that to the devs who are posting anti-white hatred, attacks on gamers, and death threats to MAGA. Exactly this. You can't defend the actions of these clearly mentally deranged individuals just because their jobs are in the games industry. We need to gut all of this, and that's kind of the point of this video. The entire woke agenda movement, whatever you want to call it, is getting gutted right now by Doge and Elon Musk, as I showed in the video earlier already. But at a commercial level, these games are also being rejected outright as well. Even Artur Smiorowski, a game dev, spoke on the Mark Dara thing, and here's what he said. As always, players criticizing the industry are an irrelevant, loud minority until layoffs come. These people stick to their dev bubble, where such sentiment is prevalent, and their customers are considered enemies. Well, they lost big time and still learned nothing. And that's exactly it. In the end, these devs have learned absolutely nothing from their mistakes. And they keep proving time and again that they will just continue to keep serving the same slop regardless because they just truly do believe that they are in the right. Despite the loss of sales, dwindling player numbers, layoffs, or attacks that would not exist had they not attacked players first, or pushed ideology through their art would exist in the first place. None of it would. This is, as always, just simply activists that are mad that they are being held accountable for their own actions finally. And now that they are, it's suddenly a problem. Woe is me. We should instead just allow them to what? Destroy every single franchise we hold dear, otherwise we're the bigots. Make it make sense. It makes zero sense. All of this just makes about as much sense as making a sequel to Inquisition that sidelines Solus, or making a Pillars of Eternity spin-off game where all the reactivity, choices, and romance options that are in those games already are suddenly now stripped of it, yet you're expected to play it and enjoy it regardless of quality and pay full price if you play it on Steam. These devs may think they're in the right, but all they're really doing is destroying everything that these franchises stood for. And because of that failure to realize when they've lost, the gutting will continue. But thank you for watching, subscribe, thanks for being here, I'll see you in the next one.